It started as a simple night out, a casual gathering of friends, the kind we'd had a dozen times before. The laughter echoed through the dimly lit bar, glasses clinking, conversation flowing as freely as the drinks. My husband, Mark, was in his element, his arms slung casually over my shoulders, his deep laugh blending seamlessly with the chatter around us. And then there was Jake, his best friend since college, the man who had been at our wedding, the man who had stood by us through thick and thin. Jake had always been the life of the party, the one cracking jokes, the one who pushed the boundaries just enough to be funny without ever quite crossing the line. Or so I thought. That night, the air felt different. Maybe it was the way Jake's eyes lingered on me a little too long, or the way his laughter felt sharp, almost pointed. I brushed it off. We were all drinking after all. Maybe I was imagining things. But then, as the night wore on, the jokes started. They were small at first. Innocuous. A teasing comment about my dress, a playful nudge about how Mark was lucky to have me. But then they escalated. "You know, if Mark ever messes up, you know where to find me," Jake said, grinning over his beer. The table erupted in laughter, but something in his eyes made my stomach turn. I forced a smile, glancing at Mark, expecting him to roll his eyes or brush it off. But he just laughed along with the others. It didn't stop there. The night wore on, and the jokes kept coming, except they didn't feel like jokes anymore. There was an edge to them, something darker lurking beneath the surface. Jake's hand brushed against mine one too many times, his words slurring as he leaned in closer. "I'm just saying," he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. If things were different, I pulled away, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a joke. This was something else. And the worst part, Mark was right there, laughing oblivious. Or maybe he wasn't oblivious. Maybe he just didn't care. By the time we got home, I felt sick. I wanted to shake it off, to pretend it hadn't happened. But the words stuck with me, the way Jake's hand had lingered too long, the way Mark had laughed it off like it was nothing. And that was just the beginning. The night started just like any other. We'd been out with Jake dozens of times before, and never once had I felt this strange, this watched. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid. After all, Jake had always been flirty, but harmless. Mark never seemed to mind. If anything, he encouraged it, seeing Jake's teasing as nothing more than friendly banter. But that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the way Jake kept looking at me when he thought no one was watching. Maybe it was the way his hand brushed against mine under the table, lingering just a fraction of a second too long. At first, I convinced myself I was overreacting. But as the night went on, his comments became bolder, more suggestive. What started as teasing remarks about my dress, how Mark was so lucky to have me, turned into something more, something that made my skin crawl. Then came the moment that made my blood run cold. Jake leaned in, his voice low enough so only I could hear. "Fit. You ever wonder what it'd be like?" he murmured, his breath reeking of alcohol. I froze. "What are you talking about?" "You and me," he said, a slow, knowing smile stretching across his face. "If things were different." A chill ran down my spine. I pulled away, my stomach twisting. This wasn't just a joke anymore. I expected Mark to step in, to shut it down, but he didn't. He just sat there, laughing along with Jake, like it was all some big, harmless joke. Maybe he really thought it was. Maybe he was just too drunk to see what was happening. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he'd always known. As we left the bar, I waited for Mark to say something, to acknowledge what had happened. But he didn't. He just grabbed my hand like everything was fine. Like Jake hadn't just crossed a line, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Did you hear what Jake was saying?" Mark chuckled, unlocking the car. "Yeah, he was being an idiot. You know how he is." "I wasn't just being an idiot, Mark," I said, my voice shaking. "That was something else." "Oh, something else?" Mark sighed, sliding into the driver's seat. "You're overthinking it." I stared at him, my heart pounding. Was I? Or was this the moment everything started to fall apart? The following days were uneasy. I told myself to let it go, but I couldn't shake the feeling of Jake's words creeping into my mind, replaying over and over. I found myself watching Mark differently, searching for something, some sign that he understood, that he cared. And then it happened again. We were at another gathering, another casual night with friends, and Jake was there, of course. At first I did my best to avoid him, but he didn't make it easy. He found me when Mark wasn't looking, his smile lazy, his voice laced with something unreadable. Did I make you uncomfortable? I swallowed hard. Oh, what do you think? He laughed, leaning in. Relax. It was just a joke, a joke, a joke. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay calm. You should probably stop joking like that. His grin didn't falter. Oh, why? You afraid you'll like it? That was it. I pushed past him, my breath shallow, my pulse hammering. And when I found Mark, I didn't hesitate. You need to talk to him, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's face darkened. About what? I glared at him. You know what? For the first time, Mark looked uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, he doesn't mean anything by it. He's just messing around. He's not, I said, my voice breaking. And if you don't see that, then maybe you're part of the problem. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just about Jake anymore. It was about Mark. It was about the way he dismissed it, the way he refused to see what was right in front of him. And then I realized something else. Maybe this had happened before. Maybe this wasn't the first time Mark had let things slide, had turned a blind eye. I looked at him then really looked at him. And suddenly, I saw everything so clearly. Jake wasn't the only one who had betrayed me that night. Mark had too.